section 8.5 is factoring a trinomial in the form x squared plus bx plus c. And what we're going to do is that we are going to write trinomials in that form as the product of two binomials. Okay? To factor a trinomial in the form x squared plus bx plus c as the product of binomials, you must find two numbers that have a sum of b and a product of c. All right, so you need to keep in mind that you want the sum of b, which is the middle term, and a product of c, which is the third term. Okay? So let's take a look at problem 1. Problem 1 is factoring x squared plus bx plus c, where b is greater than 0 and c is greater than 0. That means that b is positive and c is positive. Both of these are positive. Okay? All right, so we want to know what is the factored form of r squared plus 11r plus 24. Okay? Now, the way we're going to do this, you guys, there's this thing that I call the X method. Okay? This is not in your textbook. You should write this down. Okay? We have the X method. Okay? We are also going to use a table to list the pairs of factors of the constant term c and the sum of those pairs of factors. Okay? So, when we multiply, according to what we just wrote down in the introduction, when we multiply, we want this to be the c term. We want that to be c. Okay? So, when we multiply, we want a positive 24. When we add the factors, we want to end up with b. Okay? So we want to end up with a positive 11. Okay? So, in our table, we're going to list the factors of 24. Okay? And the factors of 24 are 1 times 24, right? 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and I should put another row in here, 4 times 6. The next part of the rule says that if we add these factors, we need to get our b term. So if we add them, we need to get 11. So now, which one of those will give us 11? 3 times 8, or 3 plus 8, right? So that's going to give us 11, and those are the two numbers that we're going to use. Is everybody clear? So those numbers go over here in our x. We've got a positive 3 and a positive 8.
Does it matter which side you pick on?
No, it does not. It does not matter. So now we put them into our binomial terms. So we have, and these are r. Our first term is r squared. So it's going to be r times r. And then we just take this positive 3, put it into the parentheses. Take the positive 8 and put it into the parentheses. Got it? And then you can check to see if you have the right terms by checking to see if you add them, will you in fact get 11r. So here we have 3 times r is 3r, that's a positive 3r. And we have 8, r times positive 8, So that's a positive 8r. So 8, 9, 10, 11, r, and we got the right answer. Is everybody clear? Problem 2 is factoring x squared plus bx plus c, where b is less than 0 and c is greater than 0. So here it says sometimes factorable trinomials have a negative coefficient of x and a positive coefficient and a positive constant term. In this case, you need to inspect the negative factors of c to find the factors of the trinomial. Okay? So here it says that b is less than 0. That just means that b is negative. Okay? And c is greater than 0. That means that c is positive. All right. So again, we are going to look at our x method. We're going to use our x method. So when we multiply, what do we want to get? We want to get a positive 8. We want the c, right? We want a positive 8. And then when we add, we want to get a negative 6. Okay? So now we just want to list our factors of 8. Okay? So we've got 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. When you multiply, we want to get a positive 8. Okay? What kind of numbers can I multiply to get a positive? A negative times a negative, or a positive times a positive. So this could be either both positive or both negative, right? Taking that a little further, when we add, we want to get a negative 6, right? So what two numbers, if both have to be positive and both have to be negative, which ones are they going to be if when I add them, I'm going to get a negative? We're going to need two negatives, right? So that means that all of these have to be negative, and the one that gives me the negative 6 is the negative 2 and the negative 4. You got that? So those are the numbers that are going to go over here. So this is going to be negative 2 and negative 4. Okay? So now we write them as binomials. So we have, and keep in mind we're using the variable y. So y times y gives me the y squared. And then we put in our binomials. Minus 2, minus 4. And now you can check it. Negative 2 times y is negative 2y. Y times negative 4 is negative 4y. And when you add those together, you get negative 6y. Problem 3. When you factor trinomials with a negative constant term, you need to inspect pairs of positive and negative factors of c. Okay? And here, we have a positive n and we have a negative c. Okay? So let's again start with our x method. Okay, there's our x. And I don't have a table there, so I'm just going to write my factors on the side. That is okay. You don't have to do it in table form. So when we multiply, what do we want to get? Negative 36. And when we add, what do we want to get? Positive 9. All right. So which one of these are we going to find the factors for? 36 or 9? 36. Good. So we have 1 times 36, 2 times 18, right? 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and last one, 6 times 6. So now we have to think about our C. What kind of C do we want? We want a negative C, right? So what two numbers do I have to multiply together to get a negative number? One positive and one negative, okay? So we need one positive, one negative to get a negative 36. Now, when we change those factors to addition, what do I need to get? I need a positive 9. My answer has to be positive. So when I'm adding a positive and a negative, which one has to be positive and which one has to be negative in order to give me a positive answer? Excellent. The bigger one has to be positive in order for the answer to be positive. For the answer to be positive, right? So, when we change this to addition, the bigger number has to be positive, and the smaller number has to be negative. Okay? So, looking at this, which one is going to give us a positive 9? Very good. The negative 3 plus positive 12 is going to give us a positive 9. You got that? So, we write our binomials. So we have a negative 3 and a positive 12. And now we can write it as our two binomial factors. So we have n times n, that gives me the n squared. Okay? And then we have minus 3 plus 12. And again, you can check. Negative 3 times n is negative 3n. And n times positive 12 is positive 12n. And that negative 3n plus 12n gives me 9n. All right. Letter B, we have c squared minus 4c minus 21. And again, we're going to organize using our x method. So when we multiply, what do we want to get? Negative 21. And when we add, what do we want to get? Negative 4. Very good. So, factors of what? 21, right? All right, so now we need to find our factors of 21. 1 times 21 and 3 times 7. That is it, right? Okay. So, we want a negative 21 when we multiply, right? So that means that one has to be positive and one has to be negative. But when we add, we want to get a negative 4. So, which one has to be positive and which one has to be negative? Tyler?
The 7 has to be negative.
The 7, or the larger one, has to be negative, right? Very good. So, when we change this to addition, we've got negative, negative, positive, positive. So, this is the one that's going to give us a negative 4. You see that? So now we can put that in our chart. So we have a positive 3 and a negative 7. And now we can write our binomials. Okay, so since we're using our variable c, this is going to be c times c, right? And now we're going to put our, finish up our binomial. So plus 3 and minus 7. And then again, we will check it. 3 times c is a positive 3c. And c times negative 7 is a negative 7c. And when I add those, I get negative 4c. All right, problem 4 is applying factoring trinomials. Okay? A rectangle's area is 2x minus x. Not 2x. A rectangle's area is x squared minus x minus 72. We want to know what are the possible dimensions of the triangle, and we want to use factoring to figure it out. Okay? So what's the area of a rectangle?
Length times height.
Length times width. Very good. So area is length times width, right? And we're going to write these. Once we multiply the length times the width, my area is this trinomial, right? So once we break that trinomial into 2 separate binomials, there's my length, there's my width. Okay? So we're going to use our x method again. Okay? And when we multiply, what do I want to get? Negative 72. Let's see. And when I add, what do I want to get?
1.
Negative 1. Very good. Careful. There's a negative here. Minus, the sign is also the operation, or the operation is also the sign of the number that follows, right? So that is a negative 1. All right. So, factors of 72. So we've got 1 times 72, right? 2 times 36, good. 3 times, got it? 24, okay. 4 times 18. 6 times 12 and 8 times 9. Again, we want a negative, right? So if we want a negative, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. When we add, we want a negative 1. So which one has to be positive, which one has to be negative? The smaller one has to be positive. The larger number has to be negative. Because remember, when you are adding, you subtract and take the sign of the higher number, right? So, when we change these to add, the bigger number has to be negative, and the smaller number has to be positive. So which one is going to give us a negative 1 when we add, Bryce? Very good. 8 plus negative 9. And that is what's going to go into our little x diagram. So we've got a plus 8 and a minus 9. And now we can write our binomials. So this is going to be x plus 8 times x minus 9. And again, we can check it, okay? You can check it by doing the entire FOIL method, right? To check to see if you've got the x squared minus x plus 72, or you can just check what we've been checking. So this is going to be 8x positive, and this is going to be negative 9x, which gives us a negative 1. So this is area is equal to length times width. You got it? All right. You can also factor some trinomials that have more than one variable. consider the product P times 9Q times the quantity P plus 7Q. Okay? If we FOIL it, we've got P times P, the first. P times P, that's P squared. Right? First outer is going to be P times 7Q, which is 7PQ. Inner, 9Q times P, which is 9PQ. And last, which is 9Q times 7Q, which is 63Q squared. Okay? When we simplify, we get P squared plus 16PQ plus 63Q squared. Now, this suggests, I'm just going to read it, this suggests that a trinomial with two variables may be factored if the first term includes the square of one of the variables, the middle term includes both variables, and the last term includes the square of the second variable. So, we're going to factor a trinomial with two variables. And we're still going to use our x method. Okay, we'll still use the x method. We want to know what is the factored form of m squared plus mn minus 27n squared. Okay. Here's our x method. When we multiply, what do we want to get? Negative 27. When we add, we want to get positive 6. Okay? So, here we're going to find the factors of negative 27. So, we've got 1 times 27. Right? And 3 times 9. Anything else? Nope, that's it, right? That's it. So, we know when we multiply, we want a negative, right? So 1 has to be positive and 1 has to be negative. Well, when we add, we want it to be positive. So which one has to be positive and which one has to be negative?
The lower one has to be negative.
The lower one has to be negative, and the bigger one has to be positive. Very good. So, when we change this to add, the bigger one has to be positive, and the smaller one has to be negative. So knowing that, which ones are going to give me my binomials? Very good. Negative 3 and 9. That's what's going to give me a positive 6 here. So we've got negative 3 here, positive 9 there, and now we can write our binomials. Okay? Now, the first term is m squared, right? To get m squared, it's m times m. M times m. The second term is an n squared. To get n squared, it's n times n. Okay? And now you just create or put your numbers in to get your binomials. So this is going to be a minus 3 here and a plus 9 there. And there are the two binomials that give you the trinomial when you multiply them. To check them again, negative 3 and m. So that's going to be negative 3 m times n. Remember, you write it alphabetically, right? And then over here, m times positive 9n. Very good. And when you add those, you get positive 6mn. Is everybody clear?
Yep.